Last night I photographed the Whirlpool Galaxy, and this is a brand new object we haven't covered yet in the course. So I wanted to explain how I set everything up last night because there were some problems I ran into. We're going to look at how to use an auto guider while you're on location, and I'm also going to cover some of the problems you'll encounter with having a laptop here and the auto guider. There's a lot to get into, but the great thing about the Whirlpool Galaxy is that it's super easy to find, and all you have to do is find the Big Dipper first. Once you found the Big Dipper in the northern portion of the sky, now you need to find the last star in the handle. And then from there, we're just going to go, depending on where it's at in the sky, up or down above that star a little bit. And right there is the Whirlpool Galaxy. This is one of the easiest objects to find, besides probably the Orion Nebula. The main problem with the Whirlpool Galaxy, though, is that it's very small. And as you can see here in this raw photo, this was at 600 millimeters. And even then, it's still pretty tiny in the frame. So ideally, maybe you have a decent sized telescope with a little CCD camera, although we haven't gone into any of that yet. But for most people, if you have your DSLR and a telephoto lens, you might not get the best results from this object unless, again, you can shoot 500 millimeters, 600 millimeters up that range. Anything smaller than that, it's just going to be too small in the frame to get great results. Now, if you've watched the Auto Guider course, you've seen that I was putting my laptop on a little hard case and that was working okay. But last night, the problem I had was that there was some pretty serious wind blowing in after it got dark, which was kind of a disappointment, especially when you've got a big telephoto lens and you're zoomed in all the way. That wind will cause you some problems. So what I did last night is I parked the car right up against the star tracker here to try and block the wind, and unfortunately the wind shifted and it's coming from here now, so it didn't work as well as I would have liked. But that's something you can try as well. If there's a little bit of wind and you're going to be near your vehicle, try and park it so that way it's blocking the majority of the wind. And then from here too, I can put my laptop right inside the car, and it's a little bit easier to use from this height. So that was the first thing I want to cover. And the problem I had last night too is that I forgot to do my polar alignment right out of the gate. I figured I'll just do everything in Sharp Cap. But what I should have done, as we've already talked about, is remove the caps and then do your rough polar alignment without anything attached. You don't have to worry about it. Just make sure you can see the North Star somewhere in the reticle. That's usually good enough. And then once we attach our auto guider, we can use Sharp Cap to get it much more precise. But I forgot to do that last night, so that added in about another 10 minutes to my total setup. So just like normal, you can do your rough polar alignment, just looking through the polar scope. Once you've done that, now we can attach our counterweight, and I got that right here. And now I can attach my big telephoto lens and my camera. Once your camera's attached, you have to also attach the guide scope. So if you have a little hot shoe cover, you'll want to take that off. That is, if you are using this mounting method. If you have the Star Adventure, you can probably mount it on the declination bracket itself. You got a lot of options if you're on the Star Adventure. For the Skyguider Pro, I have seen some inventive ways to do it that seem to work well, but for me, the simplest way was just to attach it to the hot shoe. Again, we covered a lot of all in the Auto Guider course if you haven't watched those videos yet, but I'm gonna grab my guide scope now, and again, I've got it on the hot shoe mount, so I can just slide that right in, tighten it down, like so. It's not completely tight, it wobbles a little bit, but for what we're doing, that's gonna work okay. I'll also take off my front cap here. And once you've attached your guide scope wherever it's going, now we can balance the counterweight. So for that, I'll loosen the clutch. You guys already know this pretty well by now. Move the counterweight out where it needs to be. And I am using just a demo camera here, but last night when I had my 750 on there, I did need a second counterweight just because this adds some extra weight up there. So if you only have one counterweight, you might need to get another one now. You could also get some, magnets or any kind of weight just to make things balanced. But that looks pretty good there. Remember, we usually want things slightly east heavy. In this case, that's the side with the counterweight, but not too much. So, that's probably going to be good enough. I can tighten it down. All right. Now that we've done our counterweight balancing. You should have already done your rough polar alignment, but just to remember, we can always crouch down. I'm going to use these 2 screws here. It's kind of my gun sights, and I want to make sure that I can see the North Star dead center right over the top of that guide scope. And as I mentioned, this thing does flex left and right very slightly, so in this case, we are going to be turning it in this direction. So with that in mind, I can intentionally torque it to the right, just for kind of like future-proofing it, if you will. And there we go. Polaris should be visible right over the top of our auto guider. Now we can connect the cables to our laptop, start up SharpCap, and do our precise polar alignment from there. Now that I've got my cables connected from the auto guider to the laptop and the star tracker, we can head over to SharpCap. And once you get into SharpCap, there's a really important setting that I've discussed before, but I actually forgot about last night. And thankfully I caught it right off the bat. But remember, SharpCap is going to work by identifying your current latitude and longitude and basing its calculations on that. And in my case, I had mainly set this to my coordinates back in Ohio. So out here in Utah, it's completely different, and that's going to throw off the calibration basically inside of SharpCap. So the very first thing you want to do if you are traveling is always verify your current latitude and longitude. And the easiest way to do that is using a few different apps on your phone. What I did last night is I went into the Star Adventure Mini console app, which we've talked about already. Then I went to the Polar Clock utility, click on location, and that's usually the best way to get your current latitude and longitude. However, it was giving me some problems for whatever reason last night. So as a backup, I used the Photographer's Ephemeris app. I think we've also covered that one, but I really like that app as well. Once you load up the Photographer's Ephemeris, it should automatically pull in your location, and in the upper right, it'll tell you your current latitude and longitude. Once you have those numbers, you can go into the File, SharpCap Settings, and then go to the tab here, and then enter your correct latitude and longitude. If you don't remember to do that, it will throw things off. So once you've gotten your current latitude and longitude, you can continue along. And you should already be somewhat familiar with this process, but we'll go up to the, of course, you have to connect your camera if you haven't done so already. So we'll go to Cameras. In this case, I'm using the ZWO ASI 120mm. At this point, we should now see the stars visible on the screen. You can always adjust your shutter speed here, or in other words, your exposure to 2 or 3 seconds. That tends to work well. And your gain around 70 or 80, I find works pretty well. Once you can see the stars and everything's looking good, we'll go up to Tools and then Polar Align. Once this screen loads up, you should see the correct coordinates now listed there. This is a good time to double check that. And now we're ready to run through the polar alignment process. If you've already done a rough polar alignment here, like I showed you a million times, this will make things a bit faster. And the problem I had last night is I thought I was at 33 degrees north, and when I started up SharpCap, it couldn't solve the image because I wasn't close enough to the North Pole. Then I looked on my phone and I realized it was at 38 degrees north, not 33. So I had to really crank this thing up higher than it was. And then at that point, I was able to get the polar align feature working in SharpCap. Anyway, it shouldn't be too hard at all. You'll just click Next. It's going to tell you, if you're relatively close, that everything was successful. And then it'll tell you to rotate your right ascension by 90 degrees. So all we have to do is come around here, loosen our clutch, drop it down to 90 degrees, and tighten it down. Provided you done everything correctly and your cables don't get snagged, the screen should update now on SharpCap. And now is when we're going to do our altitude and azimuth adjustments. And I know in the auto guide course I probably made this more complicated than it needs to be. It's very simply going to tell you left or right, up or down, and to varying degrees. And last night I believe I originally had to go up quite a bit. So all you do for that is just, you kind of got to figure out which way is which, but you'll adjust your altitude knob here. If you start going down, like I'm going down right now, I don't want that. So I have to go the opposite direction. So I'll turn it up. And since our shutter speed in SharpCap's like 2 or 3 seconds, it'll take a little while for it to register where you're pointed. So you really want to just do very small adjustments, check the screen, and see if you're any closer. Once you get to the point where it's starting to tell you to go the opposite direction, you know you went a little bit too far. So you can just very slowly adjust it the other way. And I usually try and get the altitude or the up or down adjustments finished first, just because that's easier for me. Then once you're starting to look pretty good at that stage, you can do left or right. Those are our azimuth adjustment screws here on the front. So we'll just turn them both at the same direction at the same time. The star tracker will move very slightly left or right. We'll check the screen. You get the idea. Like I said, the first night this took me like 30 minutes. The past few nights I'm doing this takes me 5 minutes or less. It's very simple and super accurate. It's going to help you out a lot alone, you know. Even without doing the guiding, this will really help your results. But of course, the whole reason about this is for the auto guiding. So once you've gotten it pretty good in sharp cap, I would say fair to a good rating. That's more than enough for what we need. We can rotate everything back to the starting position. And now we need to find, in this case, the Whirlpool Galaxy. And I think I mentioned this at the start of the video, but it's very easy to find. All we have to do is look up already in the same direction we're looking, find the Big Dipper, find the star at the very end of the handle, and that'll be our starting point. So I'm going to loosen my right ascension declination. I'm going to crouch down here and just try and angle it up. And it's a lot more difficult now that we have this guide scope, because before we could look over the top of the camera, but this really kind of doesn't help. So that makes my life a little bit harder, but last night it was right about here. So I tightened it down, tightened these down, and I left my lens at about 150 millimeters because even at this focal length, we can still barely make it out. And once you've gotten it at least visible in the frame here, then you can zoom in. So once you've got the Whirlpool Galaxy visible, now we can zoom in. We can always turn on live view. We can refocus the lens as needed. And we just want to get the Whirlpool Galaxy centered up as much as possible. And one of the great ways you can do that, because doing this manually can really make it jump a lot in your live view screen, what I like to do is just use these slew buttons here on your Skyguider Pro, your Star Adventure, whatever you're using. So you can just move things very slowly up and down, left and right, depending on the configuration of your lens. And that'll get you really precise results. So we'll just keep taking test photos. And once we have the Whirlpool Galaxy as closely as possible to the center, we'll just double check that everything's focused properly, and then we can continue on. Okay, so at this point, I'm assuming you've gotten the Whirlpool Galaxy centered up in the frame, everything's focused, and you would pretty much be ready to start taking photos. So now is when we're going to start PHD2 and begin our auto guiding. I also recommend you get your wired remote if you've got one of those and attach that to your camera, because we are going to be shooting longer than 30 seconds, so in most cases you will need the remote. You can also now adjust your shutter speed to bulb mode, that we can actually make use of the remote, and lower your ISO. Last night I was shooting between 4 and 5 minute exposures, and I found around ISO 800 works pretty well. So our camera settings would be wide open on your lens, whatever that is. In my case, it's like f6.3 when I'm at 600. ISO 800, you can go a little bit higher if you want. And then the shutter speed, again, since we're using the auto guide, it's going to be about, shutter speed is going to be about 3 to 5 minutes. You can do more or less, and we'll talk about some reasons you might want to do that here in a minute. But again, everything's been connected. Our lens is pointed up where we need it to be. Now we can head back to the laptop and start up PHD2. Now we're ready to start up PHD2 and begin our guiding. So as you know by now, it's very simple. We'll just click on the USB icon. We can connect our camera and our mount. Next, we need to begin looping exposures so we can actually see the stars. So we'll click the begin looping button, and there we go. Now your shutter speed, or in other words, your exposure, should have already been set from the auto guider course. If not though, put it to about 3 seconds. That tends to work well. And also, if you haven't done so already, make sure the declination access is turned off. So you can either do this from the little graph, or you can go into the brain menu and go to the algorithms tab and turn off the declination motor from there, because our Star Adventure and Skyguider Pro do not have an automated declination. That's going to screw you up later. So you got to verify that's turned off. It should already be, but just to double check. All right, so now we have our stars on screen. Declination has been turned off. All we have to do now is click the begin. Actually, we have to click a star first. So you can either hit Alt-S and PHD2 will automatically select a star for you. I personally like to do it myself. So I'm going to click a star that I think looks pretty bright but not overly saturated. And last night I got a really great star to focus on. Once you've gotten that star selected, now we can click begin guiding, and PHD2 is going to run through a calibration phase, which will take about 3 or 4 minutes. Once that finishes, we'll now see the green crosshairs. We're all good to go. We're officially guiding. And now I just sit back and watch that graph for about a minute. I just want to verify that the RA line is staying pretty close to the center there, within plus or minus 4 arc seconds is usually good enough. And provided I don't see any big jumps, now I can go back to the camera and start my exposures. So in this case, I've already set everything up on my remote. I've got, this is up to you. You can do a 3-minute long shutter speed. You can even do 2 minutes. You can do 4 minutes. You can do 5 minutes. So let's talk about why you would use some of those settings versus others. And the problem I had last night, again, there was that pretty strong wind coming from this direction, and that was shaking the camera and everything very slightly. Now, one of the benefits of shooting a longer exposure is that that motion is almost nullified just because of the way everything works out. But on the same hand, if there's a big gust of wind out of nowhere, and that happens over the course of a 5-minute exposure and it blurs the stars, I've now just lost 5 minutes of working time. And that's a huge loss. So you might be better off shooting 2 or 3 minute long photos, even if you can shoot longer and still have sharp stars, just because you're not willing to risk 5 whole minutes of wasted data. So what I did last night is I started off with 5-minute long shutter speeds. That was working really well, but the wind kept getting progressively worse. So I bumped it down to 4 minutes, and there's still some movement. So in hindsight, I probably should have stuck with like 2 or 3 minute exposures and just taken more, but I'm still getting used to the auto guiding. So if you've got a perfectly calm night and you really don't have too much to worry about, I would shoot as long as you can. Again, 5 minutes is usually more than enough. But that leads me to the problem that I encountered last night when I was looking at the editing, and that is that all of my photos had pretty obvious hot pixels. And when we're photographing the Whirlpool Galaxy, we're really cropping in pretty heavy, so those hot pixels have become much more of an issue than they normally would. And the problem I had last night was I forgot to take my dark frames, which I'm not used to taking, so it wasn't a surprise. And that would be my big tip to you, is once you've taken however many photos you can take at night, put your lens cap on and then restart your interval. Whether you're doing that through the remote or whatever you're doing, but take the exact same shutter speed, the exact same ISO, same aperture, and what you'll want to do is take anywhere from 10 to 15 exposures to map out those hot pixels. We've already talked about this in the Auto Guider course, but again, the reason you're taking these dark frames is because Deep Sky Stacker and Sequitur can use those to help remove the hot pixels for you. So remember to do that. I forgot. We'll look at some ways to reduce them using some other techniques in Photoshop, but it always helps to remove them by taking dark frames when you can. And that's about all I have for you in the on location segment for the Whirlpool Galaxy. In the following video, I'll show you how to do all the post-processing. Just to recap the most important points today. First is that I was using the Auto Guider, which complicated things a little bit, but at the same time allowed us to do some really cool new things. First, we were able to use Sharp Cap and get a much more precise polar alignment than we ever could have done using the built-in polar scope. That allows us to shoot longer exposures right out of the gate, even without guiding. But then we used PHD2, and that should allow us to shoot easily 5 minutes. The problem, though, that I had last night was I had the constant gusts of wind coming, and it just caused me a lot of problems. So ideally, I could have even moved the car around to block the wind better, but I didn't want to potentially hit the tripod and knock everything over. Another thing that I want to mention is that I actually had some people come over. I was in Arches National Park, and a little crowd gathered around. They wanted to see what I was doing, and I was really worried that somebody would snag a wire and cause everything to come tumbling down. So that's something else you got to keep in mind, is keep your wires tight and make sure you guide people away from your camera. That way they don't accidentally trip on one in the dark. And then beyond that, the only other thing would be to remember to take your dark frames, which I always forget. You can do that at the very end of your shooting session when the sensor's nice and warm. Just put your lens cap on and take another sequence of photos, ideally 5 to 20 images, the more the better. And everything should stay the same aperture, same focal length ideally, and same shutter speed and ISO. Once you have your normal photos and your dark frames, now we can head over to the computer and start our post-processing.